Hello, everybody. Welcome to Digital Analytics Wednesday, and welcome back for those that have joined Digital Analytics Wednesday previously. This is a first for us, a first online situation, and I hope that everybody's... So we wanted to do our part and bring Digital Analytics Wednesday back to you as an online session. It is a first for us, so please bear with us. We hope that everything goes well from a tech side. Yeah, it's our first time, so appreciate that. And the beauty of that is that we can now open up our session that is hosted in Singapore to also Malaysia and Indonesia at the same time. So we do have an audience from those countries joining in as well, which is great. So welcome also to our joiners from Indonesia and Malaysia. Also, because normally you would have now eaten some pizza, you've had some beers, you would have mingled with like-minded digital enthusiasts. Unfortunately, we can't do that for you. I hope you maybe have a beer with you at the moment, are munching on some pizza. But what we are doing to make that up for you, we're bringing a third session, a third speaker. Normally we have two speakers for you during the evening, but we're bringing a third one for you today in form of a product showcase. And now let's just jump straight in. I'm handing over to Hari from the Digital Analytics Wednesday team, who will run you through what's on the agenda today. And then we're kicking off with the first presentation. And please subscribe also to our YouTube channel because we don't know when this is going to end. So we will continue with the form as it is now. Please subscribe so that you stay tuned and updated with news from Digital Analytics Wednesday.
Great, thank you, Eva. Guys, yeah, so to quickly take you through the agenda, we'll be going through our similar format that we generally have when we physically meet, right? So we'll have a speaker, first speaker from Mobilewalla, we have Soumita Roy, and then we'll have a product demo, which we have brought in, like Eva said, to compensate our virtual meeting. So we'll have Tony from AppsFlyer, giving us a demo of AppsFlyer specifically focused on lifetime value and retention metrics, and followed by a second speaker from ADA Singapore, Summer Choo, and she will help us to go through data-driven strategies. Right? And we'll also have a break in between after the demo for 10 minutes. So it spans from 7 to 9, our usual agenda of 2 hours meeting. To kick off, I would like to introduce Soumita Roy from Mobilewalla. Mobilewalla is a company that got founded in 2011. Right? They started off as a mobile search engine company, but then evolved into different perspectives and pivoted into different services. And now they are into ad tech and also consumer intelligence. And today we have Soumita Roy, VP of APAC Sales from Mobilewalla, and she'll take us through persistent customer identity, right? Given the shift of industry from cookie-less tracking and more shift towards first-party data, this is a very relevant topic we thought we should bring to the table. And thank you, Soumita. Over to you for you to start your session.
Thank you, Hari, for the introduction. Yes, this is the online format, so we'll have to get a little used to it. Let me share my screen, and I think I'll get started after that. Can you all see my screen? I'm hoping yes.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. I'm hoping you're all keeping safe, healthy in this lockdown, circuit breaker, or self-imposed lockdown, as would be in Indonesia. My name is Soumita. I am from Mobilewalla. And what I'm going to talk about is building a persistent customer identity, challenges, and strategies for success. So yes, we are at home, right? Circuit breakers, lockdowns. And one thing I guess we have realized, it's not so difficult, right? we can get our groceries when we order at home. You want some fancy food, we can order from a restaurant. We are doing this Zoom YouTube meeting, which used to be offline, and I'm hoping it works out perfectly. And our work has shifted online, which means that there's so much of data being generated as we stand today, so much of online activities on websites, on apps. And I'm sure when the lockdown is over, I for sure will rush to a mall to start shopping there, because I can't stand standing at home for such a long time, which means that additional data would be generated. Now, if you think about all this data generated, and IBM actually, published a report which says that 90% of the data was actually generated in the last 3 years alone, right? So of all the data in the world, 90% data was generated in the last 3 years. So it's a great time for data, and brands would actually have so much of data which will help them to understand their customers better. And on the customer side as well, I as a customer, you guys as a customer, would want to get relevant content as well. I mean, we are doing so much online. I browse a particular app or a website. I want relevant content. I want that the brand knows what I have done in the past, show me meaningful content, right? And there is a level of personalization around that. Now, the essence of providing any kind of personalization or content is that you need to know that customer in the past, right? What that person has done in the past, what kind of interactions that we have observed. And then you can actually build a lot of models around it, right? A lot of AI models to say, hey, what's this person's preferences? What could be the buying propensity of the customer? It sounds simple enough, right? Hey, we need to know their past interaction, and if I know that, I can actually build a great customer experience for my customers. But in reality, it's actually very, very difficult to do that. And the reason is on their website, I can go to a store. So my channels of interaction with the brand are many. But even at individual level, channels, there are a lot of problems when it comes to getting the data right? So even if I'm talking about just stores, just an app, just a website, it's just hard to do that. Let's take one channel at a time, right? So let's look at store, right? When we're talking about a physical store. So I walk into a store, and it's possible that I've shopped there before, which may mean that the salesperson knows me, shows me the right products for me. Very rare that happens. So you may have, had some transactions before. There's some information about you, or you are a new person and you actually end up buying. So there's some level of information that's collected, but not enough, right? Maybe an email address, phone number if you're a loyal customer. And what happens if you go into a store, you don't buy at all, right? That means that a prospective customer has come to the store, but you don't get any information about the customer. So that means they're losing a lot of information when someone comes to a store, right? So how do you solve for that? Now let's look at websites. So again, how do people interact on websites? Right? So it could be, let's say, e-commerce side. You come in and you like the website, you register, you give your information. That's the best case scenario, right? Let's say I buy a lot from Zalora. My information is available there. That's great for them. They can do a lot of things with the registration that I have done and my past behavior. But that's not usually the majority case, right? So I go into a website, I browse around, I'm a prospect, but I just don't do anything. And also sometimes I would buy things without actually providing a lot of information, just possibly a transaction information. That becomes even harder at the website, right? Now, one way this is solved is when you drop a cookie. And the cookies can be, accessed through different sessions and visits. But cookies are short-lived. They expire very soon, right? So you are not persistent. So essentially, even if you are actually able to measure or identify cookies over, different session, over a longer period, you lose them. And then when it comes to mobile apps or mobile websites, you can't really drop a cookie on Safari. And with the new changes, with Google and all, it becomes even cookie world is a different consent altogether when it comes to cookies, right? So they are pretty much dying. The bottom line, for a majority of website visits, you actually have no idea about who these customers are and have no way to track them at the individual level. So that becomes even very, very problematic when it comes to websites. Let's now look at the app channel. Now, apps are interesting because yes, first case, if you register, you have a lot of information, right? That may not happen. I download an app, I don't do much on there, but I don't register. But apps have a very interesting quality or aspect about them, which is they have persistent IDs called Mobile Advertising IDs. And they don't change, or let's say in 99% of the time, they don't change. And that's why they can be an interesting ID to be considered for building a persistent, key for your customers' interaction across channels. But one of the problems or challenges of apps is that, tracking interaction across pages in apps are harder, not as easy as you would have on websites. So, if you could actually merge some of the properties of websites with apps, it actually makes life easier, much, much better. And one other interesting thing that apps have, or mobile in general would have, is it gives you location data, right? So you can actually have GPS based data, and then we take our mobile phones everywhere, right? So my mobile phone is next to me now. I go out, it's always going to me, right? So the ability for mobile to be with you and track every movement of yours is much more than any other channel. Now let's make it the problem a little more complex, right? So it's already complex with each channel. Now, if you want to do actually, track all of these to advertising spend, right? So can I, look at what kind of ad spends are happening, and can I track it to effectiveness? But even this is a complex world because you're advertising through different channels, right? So it could be on desktop, it could be on your mobile apps, it could be out of home, it could be TV, too many channels out there to advertise. And essentially, when you want to measure that, hey, who has actually purchased or who has actually converted in a certain way, it becomes even more complex. Now, as I said, right, to identify consumer in each channel itself is difficult, and it becomes very difficult to connect people across channels. And if you want to add an advertising angle to it, to measure it across advertising spends, I think we're really talking about a very difficult problem to run. Now, there's several paths to purchase, right? We know that purchase could happen from I go to a website, I browse the website, then I go to the store. That could be a purchase, or actually quite a number of combination, and that's why it becomes more harder to figure out what's happening in the journey. Let's think about it. One purchase channel could be a receive ad. You visit a store, you actually buy it. The other could be, hey, you're visiting a website, you visit the store, and you don't buy, and you want that customer as well. If someone doesn't buy, you still want that person's information because they could be your future customers, right? So this information or this interaction and tracking it is also very important. It could be, you access through an app. It could be organic, and you put it on the cart. You don't buy, right? So again, lot of combinations possible. It will take me entire 2 hours, I guess, to give you all the combinations. So I'm skipping that part. But what happens on marketer's side is that they can see actually one path. So you receive an ad, you go to the website, you go to a cart, and you buy. Right? It's very hard to see that you saw an out of home and went to a website and you actually converted, right? So it's very hard to see different channels conversion. Now, the fundamental problem comes is why is it so hard? And the reason it is hard is, let's put it in 2 different categories. One would be around technical data issues. The other would be more on the organizational level. Right? So on the data side, I think we have covered it. One is different channels have different technology issues or different ways the different identifiers are essentially. There could be data quality issues, right? The way you're getting the data, you're not able to capture it properly. A lot of times you're actually simply not capturing the data. But on the organizational side, we see a lot of problems as well, right? So different teams manage different channels, right? So the offline team is very different from the team which manages the app or the team, and they have different systems in place, right? So integrating these systems together is a hard problem. In Asia, and in particular in Southeast Asia, actually we talk to customers and we don't hear so much about customer experience to be a problem. Yes, in certain markets that's being talked about, but not so much in these markets actually. And a lot of these organizations do not have analytical skills, right, to invest and build something meaningful or at least some level of customer key chain. Now, what do you do, right? So how do you connect the dots? Essentially, we have to start by making the invisible dots visible, right? So what you're not tracking, essentially start tracking that. And on top of that, create a channel independent persistent identity. So it has to be a channel independent persistent ID for each customer. So essentially, can I identify a customer with a same customer across offline visit, across websites, apps, etc. And the very basic of that is actually storing the data from each interaction. Who's coming to my store? Can I store that information in any key, right? So it could be information about your email ID, phone number. It could be your device ID, anything that you can store, right? Who visited your website on your web, right, on your desktop? Who visited you? Who used your app? Who visited your website on your mobile app? So any kind of interaction that you can capture, I think the first point is actually start capturing that. And trust me, we know that most times, these interactions are actually not even tracked, right? A lot of companies spend a bunch of dollars in advertising, but they don't even track people who have actually, or keep that information when people interact with their brand, right? So the first point is essentially store the basic things, right? So basic information that you can get. And then actually build a customer identity across the data that you are collecting. Right? So can I have all these different identifiers that I have got? Can I figure out that who's one individual across these interactions? Now, how do you start with building the persistent IDs? Now you have two categories of data, and I'm simplifying it for all of us, and this in most cases covers it. In the offline side, you could have information like name, address, phone number, possibly someone gives you age, gender. And I get a lot of, hey, when is your birthday, so I can get promotions. Digitally, typically the IDs are cookies, IP addresses, email, mobile IDs, etc. So these are the two categories of IDs that we have. Now let's look at all these IDs and figure out that which ID could be the most relevant for building a persistent ID. Right? So this is a table, and you can see we broke it into offline and digital, and essentially talked about persistent, cross-channel, longitudinal. Right? Now name is you're very unlikely to change your name, so it's going to be persistent, but you can't use it cross-channel. Your gender is very likely not changing, but they're not yes across these things, so it becomes harder to use any of these IDs. Now on the digital ones, the one ID which we feel could be used across these three parameters, because these, right? So mobile ID is a persistent ID. It doesn't change, right? Cross-channel. So can you use a device ID cross-channel? So yes, of course, on apps it is mobile ID. If you talk about store visits, you're likely to have your phone with it, and you can actually capture device IDs there. If you're browsing on your website, there are ways to actually map it to a device ID, like cross-device matching. So people in the ad tech industry would understand that, hey, there are ways to actually, very standardized ways to map, if you have enough data, to map your cookies into a device ID. Right? So that just table in simply presents you that, hey, this is the best ID for you to at least start thinking about building a persistent ID. So fundamentally, a mobile device ID can be a persistent key, gives you digital behavior, gives you mobile behavior, and the most important is also helps you, capture your offline behavior. So, and once you have these things, mapped, I think you can start tracking the consumer over a long period of time. Now, I'm going to talk about or show you a case study, which Mobilewalla as a company has done with a retailer. And before I do, I'll just take 30 seconds to explain what we do, so it's easier for you to understand this particular scenario. So we capture data primarily for mobile phones, and we build consumer portraits, right? So, and all this information is actually tied to a mobile advertising ID. So we could say that this mobile advertising ID belongs to a female, who lives in certain parts of the world, in Singapore or somewhere, travels, etc. And we do certain other things around, cross-device, which helps us to, build persistent IDs. So here it is, and I'm going to show numbers here. So this is a customer who has multiple channels of selling, right? So omni-channel in its space, and one of the challenges they have is they were primarily an offline channel trying to actually sell digitally. So how do they actually identify customer across different channels? Now, good thing about this customer, which is not true, to be honest, with a lot of customers, is that they do have some existing data. And they've been capturing it quite well. What they have cookies, which are around 5 million maids, mobile advertising IDs here. I could be using mobile IDs, device IDs, mobile IDs interchangeably here. So 8 million. Now, and I'll talk to some of the numbers that I'm showing, but essentially this is what we did, right? So you have these cookies, you have maids. First step was to actually map these cookies to maids. And as I said, you can actually do it through cross-device mapping. Now, one thing you could do, you have your maids, you have your cookies, you actually just use your data to do this mapping. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to build scale, you can actually use third party like us to do the mapping. So essentially, in this case, we did a mapping here. To essentially give you scale, because it's very, very hard to see that the mapping works just within your environment. The other thing you could do is identify maids who had visited the store. So we looked at all the devices, seen in at the stores and captured that information, and we map all these channel interactions to maids, right? Essentially looked at maid at their persistent key. So essentially what we got is this table, right? So we got a cookie ID, device ID, which is 3 million, device ID, store visit 1.5 million. You have the numbers here, right? So we couldn't solve the problem. I'm not saying we could map every identity or existing data that they had, but we reached a certain point, right? So we could get 200K devices which had cookie, device ID, store way. So essentially you build a chain, right? So you know that this is one individual who has been to the store, to the website, to the this is the maid of that person, right? So you know their interaction in the back. But then we have this combinations. We only knew cookie and device ID, cookie and a device ID and store visit, or just the ID and nothing else about that. Now, the most important fact is that this cannot be built in a day, right? So when you're building customer IDs, I mean, it's not one day affair or a 1 month thing. It has to build over a period of time. Once you build it over a time, I think you reach a point, you have actually, created a customer keychain for pretty much all of your customers. So you could see that after doing that, essentially a number of IDs that you can actually identify, or customers of your own, increased because you track the offline thing. That who interacted where, and more about their journey, right? So you could know that, hey, they started with the with the website, visited later, or other way along as well, because you'll have timestamp here. So again, I've simplified this. It's much more complex than it's showing here, but I think you get the gist of what essentially was done. And again, I mean, because we know that who these device IDs are, you can actually know, hey, what's their age, range, gender, behavioral patterns, etc. So you can actually layer on that information to understand more about your customers and who they are, and map it against your advertising, I guess. Again, so how do you get started now, right? So bringing all this together. So how do you start it? First of all, I think is important is, you start your existing data. It's absolutely important to know what kind of data you're capturing today. And again, these are in silos, so it becomes very, very hard to see from different organizations what data is being captured, but that exercise needs to be done. Then you figure out what's missing, and is some simple activity essentially fixes that problem for you. What we also believe that, you start with one channel, fix one channel first, right? So if it's your most sales happens on your offline store, maybe fix that. Or if you think that the richest data that you have is on your website, fix that, right? So start with that. And once you have reached a point where you have one channel at a very decent state, you essentially start doing this connections with and applying different connectivity rules with other channels. And once you do that, I think you can track it back to advertising, right? So you can start saying that, hey, can I start knowing that who's receiving my advertising, who's going to my store? How do I optimize my marketing spend? So yeah, so that's let me summarize about what we talked about today, right? So there's several technical organizational challenges that exist today to build meaningful customer identity across channels. Mobile IDs are, at least we believe, are a great way to build a persistent key. They are persistent, and they have inherently certain things which makes it easy for us to build these key chains. Customer IDs need time. You can't build it in a day unless you have like lots and lots of data, which is very rare. You need to wait. You need to have a longer plan to build it. And we also believe if you actually employ third parties, you can do it faster, right? So cookie mapping devices, this actually becomes easier when you use third party data. That's it for me. Thank you so much. I'm assuming you'll have some questions for me. Happy to answer. Hari, are you moderating that?
Yes, Soumita. Yeah, and there are questions. So far, we've got one question, guys. But if you have any questions, feel free to ping on the comment or chat box, and we'll take it to Soumita. And we are giving away $50 voucher for the best question, which the speaker gets to choose from, right? So the question we had was, Soumita, is device ID considered a PII? I think that's a common question, right? Most of them have.
Trust me, I get this question all the time. Privacy questions are the first question I handle. Mm-hmm. No, they're not considered PII. It's a little more complex, to be honest, than just answering it. In certain contexts, it could be PII, but generally, it's not.
Got it. Thanks for the question, Sherman, and the answer, Soumita. Next question we have is from Nicole, and it says, are there downsides for having so much of tracking on apps, right?
So downside for a brand, no. I guess as a brand, you would like to see more. Yes, I mean, there could be storage issues and all. As a brand, if I'm storing too much, I need to invest. As a customer, do I want to be tracked too much? I guess we have all our limits, right? We don't want every moment to be tracked. And that's why there are so many privacy laws out there. You need to be very careful in terms of what you're tracking, when you're tracking. And I think it needs to be there. But there has to be a balance, right? I, as a customer, definitely don't want to don't want to see content which is not relevant for me. Ads which I see, I want them to be relevant. Content given to me, I want that tracking. And only where that is possible is my information is available to brands.
Got it.
So it's a balance, I guess. Is a hard answer. There's no yes and no. It's a somewhere.
Next question is from Robert. What kind of AI or data science capabilities does Mobilewalla have out of box? This is more on your services. And is there any real-time feed that is available for clients or enterprises to use?
Okay, so I'm not a data scientist. I feel like I'm very technical, but not so much on data science. I'm sorry, but at least my team or my CEO and everybody believes that we have one of the best data science teams. And the kind of things that we do in our data science team would be things like, can I predict high value customers, which could be actually used in the advertising context. So just to give you an example, what may happen is I'm showing an ad to 1 million people. But I want, and let's say I want a conversion target of 100,000. Now, what I want is those 100,000 people are high value customers, right? And we have this 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the customers are high value and 80% are not. Now, if I actually can predict even the 1 million people you're targeting are largely high value customers, your chances of acquiring high value customers is higher, right? So we do things like that where we can say that, oh, this pool, these are the high value customers. We also do things like, in the risk space, something like, hey, can risk modeling using the data, right? So what's the risk propensity? So essentially building a lot of machine learning AI models, which could be in advertising use cases, but not limited to that. We also do a lot of risk side of things and other categories. We've been actually doing a lot of things on the COVID-19, not in Asia, but in US. One of the things that we're doing is like predicting your chances of infection based on contact tracing, where we have seen in the last 30 days, 40 days. So yes, a lot of interesting use cases. If you want a little more, let's say, technical answer, I'm happy to connect you to our data science team who can give you more insights to it. What was the other question? Part of the second question, I'm sorry, there was...
no worries. Are there real-time feed available from Mobilewalla? Again, it's more technical.
We currently don't support real-time, and I'll tell you why. We have huge volumes of data. So real-time is actually very expensive for the client as well, right? So as of now, it's an offline-based transfer of data. Usually that's what we support at this stage. But we're figuring it out ways where we can give a smaller version or small set of the data to our customer as an API feed. But currently we are not supporting that just because the volume of data is so much.
Got it. Thank you, Soumita. And last question, and I'll combine two questions from Vivek and Ranjan. It's more on cross-device, right? How do you track MA ID or the consistent ID across web, from mobile to web, and how do you tackle users changing devices frequently?
So let me answer the first question, right? So cross-device is usually done using IP addresses and IP address timestamp. So the fundamental idea is I'm going to use my desktop and mobile around the same time. And if you look at our period of time, you will find a lot of moments when you're doing that together. It would take me a lot of time to explain it. So it's not, we don't do anything. I mean, we polish the basic science, we add a lot of location data, etc. But fundamentals of cross-device is not that complex. And we have a white paper. I'm happy to send it to you guys. Very detailed on how we do it, kind of approaches that we have, and it's technical. It's fairly technical, and I am happy to explain that. I understand very well, so I'm happy to explain that. But fundamentally, we use IP address, timestamp. We also use location, co-location. So, for example, I'm seeing the cookie and the device ID at the same time around the same place. It gives me a high confidence that they're same individuals. And when you do it over a time, your confidence levels are very, very high. The second question on changing phones. So yes, maids. When you change phone, your maids change, right? But there are ways to track your old phones to new phones. Now, you're not going to change your phone every 2 months. It's very unlikely unless you have so much of money and you're crazy about phones. You're not going to do it. But very likely to say 1 year, 2 years is a period. And there are ways to track your old phone with a new phone because your home addresses would be, because you give a lot of location data, your home addresses would be same. Your office, things you've done in the past and what you do now would be same. Your IP addresses would be same. So there are a lot of signals which are given by your mobile phone, which will tell us that previous phone and the new phones is the same individual end of the day.
Got it.
Again, happy to get into more details anytime. Please feel to reach out to me. And that's my email ID.
That's what we wanted to ask. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, that's my email ID. And my colleagues are Aryan and Albert are on the YouTube channel. I think they will share a white paper on today's discussion. So please go through that. I think it's an interesting read.
Definitely. Thank you, Soumita. So we have 5 questions that you've answered. I can send it to you and you can choose the best question that you want to, gift the $50 voucher.
Sure. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And
So
we'll announce it within the session.
That's good.
Yeah, every speaker gets to choose, even the demo session. Yes.
Okay, great.
Cool.
I need to choose later, right?
Yeah, we'll give you time to go through. I've already kind of sent it to you directly, the 5 questions.
Okay.
If you want to quickly go through and choose, we can. The first one was the device ID considered PII from Sherman. Then we had Nicole's question on downsides of tracking too much of data. Then we had Vivek on the cross-device, Ranjan's question on multiple devices, and Robert's question around Mobilewalla's capability on data science.
Hey, all the questions are great. I like the question on the cross-device mapping. So is it Vivek who asked the question on the cross-device?
Yes.
Yeah. Vivek. Again, everyone, it's very hard to do this.
We get it completely. Thank you, Soumita. Vivek, we'll reach out to you and work on getting the voucher delivered to you. Thank you, Soumita.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, guys, while we move on to the next part of the session, right, which is to take this time to call out our sponsors and thank them for continuously supporting us for many years now. eClerx, Decision Science, Happy Marketeer, and Telium. We do have a few of them joined this event as well. Thank you for your continuous support and helping us navigate through these sessions as well. Other thing is on the demo, so we can start with the demo. We have Tony from AppsFlyer. For all those who are not familiar with AppsFlyer, AppsFlyer is also a mobile focused platform which helps you with attributing data, tracking and attributing data to your campaign efforts, right? And Tony here would help us demo and take us through the tool with a focus on lifetime value and the respective metrics, retention metrics, right? Over to you, Tony. You can share your screen and take over.
Thank you, Harry. And look, thanks for the warm introduction.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks very much for sharing. Yeah, we would like to go to the Q&A now. So we do have some questions that came in already, but for those that are watching, please share your questions in the chat so that we can take them. So the first question was a bit of a general question. If you could just clarify for our audience what's actually the difference between AppsFlyer and Google Analytics data, and how are those capabilities helping with remarketing campaigns?
Sorry, say that again.
So there was a question from the audience that's asking what's the difference between the analytics that AppsFlyer can do and Google Analytics. If you could just go a little bit into that to explain that to our audience, because it might not be clear to everyone who's watching. And then second part of the question, how are these capabilities relevant for remarketing campaigns? If you could summarize that.
Okay. Okay, so first question, it's something that we get from more the traditional advertisers out there, okay, those that have invested heavily into either Google Analytics or into other web analytics platforms out there. So given we're a third-party attribution provider, unlike Google, right, we're able to measure Facebook and other ad networks out there, but I mentioned Facebook because that's probably the main one that in terms of volume that Google can't measure, right? So we would come in as the third-party attribution measurement partner there. And remember that Google Analytics, even though it has Firebase as their app analytics tool, it doesn't specialize so much into mobile attribution, okay? That can be a great tool for product analytics, but not so good with mobile measurement and mobile attribution. Okay, that's where we sit, and that's why we work so well with the Google account managers who would be recommending us to clients as well. Second question, I believe it was around retargeting. So I jumped in a little bit to retargeting. We only got a bit of time, but that's one strategy out of many that you could use to build your retention strategy or build your retention rate.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Then the next question was from Alfie. He's asking, or she's asking, sorry, would you have to upload the cost data to measure effectively?
So cost data is something that, look, we've got 3 teams at AppsFlyer, right? So we've got the product team, then we've got customer teams, and third is partnerships. I fall within partnerships, but my colleagues run integrations with all the ad networks, and they're forever adding in cost integrations with ad networks. This is something that we build out and a very is something that is, I suppose, where that would stand AppsFlyer compared to others above the rest, because we've done so much work in that and continue to do so. Cost data, if we were talking about it from the advertiser angle, that's something that's pushed in from the advertiser end, right? You can either do it direct via the SDK. Okay, so we've got documentation that walks through advertisers on how to set that up, or they can send it server to server. It just depends on how the advertiser would like to set that up.
Then we have one more question, that is, how do you tackle questions from agencies or clients when they see discrepancies in attribution from, let's say, between AppsFlyer and Facebook?
It'd be good to have one of my my colleagues from customer success on the call. So this is something that they get, all the time, every day. And because of that, we've built out, and it makes sense why you get these questions too, right? Because every platform, including the ad networks platforms, is different, and they work to different methodologies. Facebook doesn't look at Google, Google doesn't look at Facebook, etc., etc. So we've got documentation that answers exactly that. But one quick, direct answer for you is that our methodology works that our SDK initializes when the app opens. Right, it's not when the app is installed in the App Store or the Play Store. So the app actually has to open. So that would explain some level of discrepancy, right? If you think about the use case of a ride-hailing app, often you might press install, but then don't open it until you're actually going to use the app to get a lift. So there can be discrepancies there. It might be a day. Okay.
Thanks, Tony. Then we wrap up the Q&A now so that we also have time for the next presentation. Was there any question that was your favorite? Which one would you choose? So we had the last question was about the discrepancies, then the difference between Google Analytics and AppsFlyer. We also had about uploading cost data for efficiency perspective.
I loved the I shouldn't be marking these results myself. It goes against third-party attribution, but I love the Google Analytics and AppsFlyer question. It's something that we get all the time from agencies as well, and it's really important to sort of knock that off straight away. And hopefully I did an okay job at answering that, but I thought that was the best question.
Great, thank you. We'll make sure that who asked this question will get the voucher. Congratulations. Then let's go to the next presentation. So Summer from ADA will join us as the last speaker, and I'll leave the screen to you to share your presentation.
Hi everyone, I hope my screen has loaded up already. Okay, I'll just give it a few more seconds before I start talking in case the screen doesn't come up. Okay, I'll do a quick introduction. So today we're going to cover data-driven strategies for Southeast Asia marketers, especially during COVID-19 period. Now, Soumita from Mobilewalla as well as Tony from AppsFlyer has shared a lot of information regarding mobile device IDs, how we can use it to track user behavior on apps, and how useful it is. I will cover a little bit on that as well, but I also want to talk about if you don't have device IDs, don't despair, because there's still a lot of other ways you can gather data to make strategies during this period. Now, strategies comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. So it can be in the form of device IDs, cookies, CRM data, even right down to social listening. So I guess what we'll be covering today gives a wider perspective of how we use data to create strategies. A bit of introduction about myself. I'm the country director for EDA Singapore, and I thought it would be quite timely for me to share what I've been through during this COVID period in the last 5 weeks. So this is week 5, working from home. I used to exercise a lot in the evenings, but nowadays when I wake up, it's rolling out from bed, walking 10 steps to my work desk is just not doing it for me. So I've actually changed my workout to work out in the mornings instead. And if you realize, weekends seems to pass a lot slower because there's just not much to do in the day. So I've taken to standing in my balcony every day just to check out what my neighbors are doing. And I've concluded that Sundays are still the best day to do laundries, judging by the number of clothes I see signing out on Mondays versus other days. And by standing there, I've also realized the best time to bring my bakes out to the balcony to do photo shoots as well. Now, using a sample size of n equals to 1, which is myself, I've kind of concluded that, okay, regardless of circuit breaker or not, Sundays are still the preferred days for doing laundries. And why am I making this point? A lot of brands, a lot of companies out there are saying, oh, you know, people are going to change a lot post-COVID. Consumer behavior is going to change drastically. Is it going to be permanent? There's a lot of predictions that are being made at this point in time. What I want to say is consumers are creatures of habit. Behavior may change a little bit due to varying consequences or situations, but it may not change drastically. Now, a little bit about ADA. ADA actually means analytics, data, and advertising. Of course, the slide talks a lot about what a company does in terms of data and AI, but if I were to put it together in a simplified manner, basically we're a company that sources, strings data together and scripts data to make sense for a client of ours. So basically, a lot of companies actually have different forms of data, but they don't really know how to optimize the data, and that's what we do best at. And using digital data that we garner for our clients, we're able to develop a lot more intricate digital consumer experiences as well as insights for the clients. Now, in a recent webinar that we've hosted with 500 over attendees, we asked them, so what's the relationship with data? Do you feel that you have data? Do you feel that you understand the data that you have? And a bulk of them, more than 50% of them actually said that yes, we have data, but they don't really know how to optimize it. And I'm sure a lot of people are in the same plight as well. And I think everyone's guilty of this at this point in time. Everyone's looking for articles done by research companies, consultancy firms, and all that, trying to pull together research insights that's done by other people and try to make sense of it to formulate strategies as well. And actually, it all just becomes information overload. How do we actually sift through this load of data and make sense of it? And the ultimate big question has always been, will COVID-19 change us fundamentally or will it not? Will people suddenly have more social responsibility? Will we give up the advanced booking deals for airlines? Will we give up, will we stop allowing government to do tracking of us for our safety purposes? Will our moms stop using TikTok post-COVID? Now, there are two schools of thought. There are people who feel like, consumer habits will change drastically post-COVID. But there's also another school of thought that says, you know what, people are creatures of habit. Not everything will go back to normal post-COVID. So I think what I want to bring across is, let's not look at predictions, but let's look at past data to formulate and build deterministic modeling to find out what are the challenges and what are the opportunities we have right now. Which brings us to the core topic today, data-driven strategies. Now, bear in mind, these data-driven strategies apply whether there's COVID or no COVID as well. And I'll jump straight into it by talking about lean into data. So like I mentioned at the start, data comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And we kind of need to look at where do we want to start. Obviously, there's your own data. So we can look at all your own customer loyalty program data, CRM. You can look at Google Analytics of your own website. You can look at app analytics from, say, for example, a mobile measurement partner like AppsFlyer or other partners like AdJust. So give you very intricate data of how a consumer is behaving on your brand. Now, if you don't have access to that data, you can also look at category data as well. So for example, you can look at search volume. You can look at Google Trends. You can do social listening. You can work with your e-commerce e-retailer like Lazada and Shopee or Zalora to get more information from them with regards to seasonality, basket mix, index of sales versus other brands in the same category. And obviously, there's always third-party data. So people like Mobilewalla, people like us, will be able to provide more insights and research based off more credible sources. Now, I'll give you an example. So whenever we look into data, there are a few things that we ask. First off would be, which platforms or which channels are our consumers at, and which of them are actually indexed a lot higher versus the others? And are those channels actually conducive for me to communicate with my consumers? What are the consumers behaving, or how are they behaving when they are on these channels? Are they just browsing? Are they sharing communication, or are they contributing to it? Are they happy? Are they feeling neutral, or they are happy? And from understanding their sentiments and also the things that they've been saying and doing on this webs on the channels, we kind of will be able to find out new opportunities or threats that we should pay attention to. So what we've done is looked at the social buzz in Singapore for the past 3 months. This is taken from TalkWalker. We've intentionally excluded news because it's going to be very skewed towards COVID. We've only covered social media platforms like Facebook, IG, Twitter, as well as blogs and forums. Now, if you look at the share of voice in March, the obvious ones that stand out in terms of increased number of bars is video calls, VPN, because everyone's kind of like working at home now. But what stood out a lot more is actually Netflix and gaming. It's actually overtaken productivity, conversations like videos and VPN. Now, another category that stood out a lot in terms of social buzz during COVID, unexpectedly, was actually beauty. And what is all this buzz about? It doesn't mean that all buzz is equal and all buzz is good buzz. Now, if we take a look at buzz sentiments, the green bars being positive sentiments, yellow being neutral, and red being negative, two categories actually stood out again. The first one for beauty, there's actually a spike in terms of positive sentiments when it comes to beauty. And when we drilled down a bit deeper, what we realized was there was actually a lot of online sharing in terms of tips, in terms of articles, DIY videos that's being shared as well. So we kind of know that this beauty community is actually very tightly knitted, and everyone's kind of like in the game together to help everyone emerge out of this COVID cocoon looking like a butterfly. Now, the other one that came out quite strongly on the reverse side is actually VPN, where there's a lot of negative sentiments. Now, a lot of this negative sentiment stems for unstable connectivity. We know about StarHub that's got broadband disruption last week as well. So a lot of negative sentiments around here. It's based around poor network connectivity and all that. So other than looking at the buzz volume, it's really important to understand the kind of sentiments people are sharing in terms of the buzz. Now, if we dive a little bit deeper, we can actually extract out some of the key terms or words that people are usually using. So those in green are positive, red again negative, and yellow it's actually quite neutral. Now, these keywords clouds is actually very important because it helps us kind of identify opportunities that are relevant to your business at this point in time. So I did a quick exercise, and if I were to pick up two, say beauty products and virtual tools, what opportunities are there? Now, a lot of beauty shops have closed off. Their offline employees don't have anything to do at home now because the shops are all closed. Now, a popular fashion cosmetic brand in China, Ling Qingxuan, has actually closed down more than 40% of their stores, and all the stores in Wuhan actually. So they have about 100 plus beauty advisors that have got nothing to do. So what they've done is they activated the beauty advisors virtually. So with the 100 plus beauty advisors, they started communicating with their customers on WeChat as kind of like beauty ambassadors or beauty influencers. And you might be surprised, during the entire COVID period, their sales increased 200% in Wuhan alone versus the year before. So that's the power of redeploying and opportunizing on what we hear from a social space. Now, we see a lot of negativity when it comes to food delivery as well, especially in Singapore these days. So people are talking about, Grab delivery charges are so expensive. There's limited options. What can we buy? Perhaps an example that some brand can do is perhaps create a platform where people in the same block, the neighbors can group share and co-fund delivery charges from the same restaurant. So there's always opportunities we can look out for if you dive a bit deeper into what's happening in the category. Now let's talk a little bit about getting a new consumer lens. This particular data strategy is very important, even if it's post-COVID. It applies to us any time of the year. So how the world sees mothers, usually we give them demographic attributes. For example, a mother is probably age 25 or 30 and above. They are probably stay-home moms. Their interest should be around parenting, childcare, nutrition, and all that. But in actual fact, mothers could be working mothers. They could be an interior designer. They could be frontliners. They could be a telemarketer or an engineer. No single mother is the same mother as the other one. And honestly, mothers are more than just mothers. based on digital data that we have, we also know that mothers have other interests. A mother who's a frontliner may also have interest in photography. A mom who's a telemarketer may also have a lot of interest in finance. So the way we cater our messages and target our consumers definitely need a sharper lens. And this is why we've actually created various audience personas based on their behavior. Now, Mobilewalla and AppsFlyer has shared a lot about how we can look at mobile data to create different personas to understand users' behavior. So this is exactly the same way we use to create these different personas that we have for Southeast Asia. So what we did was we looked at consumers' mobile behavior before and during COVID-19. We also tracked the kind of app behavior they have across the region, more than 400,000 apps. And we also looked at whether these people were seen at home or at work. Now, some people may ask, how do you know if this person is at home, or how do you know if this person is at work? It depends on where the signal has been pinged off. So for example, if someone has always been seen in location XYZ on weekdays from 6 p.m. onwards to the next morning 7 a.m., we conclude that's her home location. And if let's say someone is always seen at Robinson Road from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., we conclude that's kind of like the office location. And that's where we actually build attributes around the personas, where they stay and all. Now, how do we create different personas for sharper targeting and messaging? So the great example taken from Singapore would be looking at people who are very into finance apps. So starting the left-hand side, we look at people with higher affluence. In terms of mobility, we look at people who are work from home, staying at home, and people who use finance apps. Now on the right-hand side, the line in red actually shows the number of COVID cases across the 1 month, 6 weeks that we've tracked. And we also map it across the financial apps usage. And what you notice is the dips actually belong to weekends because stock markets are closed then. And the huge spike on 9th of March is actually Black Monday, when the stock market in the US crashed. Now, if you look down below, we've also tracked which were the apps that were performing the best during this period. And obviously you see XE, Currency, Investing.com, and MySGX as well. Those are the ones that are indexing very high. And if you map it against how the US stock market was performing, the spikes actually correspond to it as well. Now, if you're looking at target this group of people, in Singapore right now, there's a base of about 225,000 of them in terms of device IDs. Based on this information, what can we do in terms of communication to a group of people that's what we call the market observer? So brands in the finance sector could look at talking about economic support, forward-thinking measures to help support families, support business owners. And of course, they've also included, accelerated their contactless free banking message as well. And this was done by DBS. Now let's look at another persona that we created for Singapore, which is the social citizen. Now in terms of affluence level, we kept it across the board. Mobility, we look at people who stayed at home, and app usage focus on social apps as well as news apps. On the right-hand side, if you look at the graph, you can see that the apps usage has actually increased from March onwards. And that's when we expect the app usage to actually increase, and it did. But what was interesting to us was Viber and Meet Me was actually the top applications that were being used as well. And this clearly shows that people are still, other than connecting to the news, people still feel the need to communicate virtually with their friends or meet up with new people. Now, a communication example brands could do would be, for example, like Lifebuoy. They leveraged on TikTok to create a wash your hand TikTok challenge, and it garnered over 1 million views over a week. Now, it's important at this point in time to create content that's reliable, that's relevant, comforting, and things that's easily shareable and people wanting to follow so that it gets the virality that you want. Now, if you want to target this group of people, that are the social citizens, in terms of base of device IDs, we are looking at about 760,000 of them in Singapore. Now, I know we have some listeners calling in from Indonesia, so I've included another slide for Indonesia. So for Indonesia, we looked at the adaptive shopper. In terms of mobility, we look at all mobility, meaning work from home or outside. And the reason is because there's no lockdown in Indonesia during the period that we are doing tracking. And what you notice is, in terms of shopping apps, the moment safe distancing actually started, the usage of shopping apps have increased a lot. I guess people don't really want to go out that much to shop because of safe distancing. And they want to also make sure that they are safe and healthy. And these are some of the apps that were top. Most of them are buy and sell apps. And even if you look at e-retailer like Lazada, they've also stopped cash on delivery options so that it reduces consumer. And the next one that I bought from Malaysia, because I understand we have some Malaysians tuning in as well. And this persona that we are using on body. So we look at people who are staying at home and their app usage of entertainment apps. So you'll notice 18th of March was when MCO started, and the usage of apps has actually increased quite drastically from there. A lot of apps are actually light-hearted entertainment apps that they've been using. And in terms of content, that if you're targeting someone in terms of app usage, entertainment, or you are an entertainment company, may want to do something a bit lighthearted, something a bit related to gaming. Like Astro Malaysia actually opened up their Astro Go free for all Malaysians to get them entertained during this CMO period. It's a shampoo, and you're talking to a home gym rat. You may want to focus a little bit more about, being strong and healthy. It's not just your body, but it also applies to how you look. For example, scalp health. Should I be still communicating with our consumers? I don't really know what to say to them at this point in time. Should I just pull out my content? So whatever your product category, our advice is please don't go dark. So an example I'm going to cite you is Slumberland. Slumberland is a mattress brand, and you might be wondering, what has Slumberland, a mattress, got to do with COVID, right? But based on data and research, we know that quality sleep improves immunity. 8 hours of quality sleep a day actually improves our immunity 3 times. Now, in this period of COVID, you should definitely be having quality sleep. And instead of talking about product USPs like what Slumberland used to do, they decided to twist it a little bit and talk about 8 hours of quality sleep gives you 3 times better immunity against diseases. Protect your loved ones. The moment we add in an element of humanity inside your messaging, it really changes the whole ballgame entirely. And these are some brands that have also done it as well. In Singapore, there were a lot of people doing panic buying and hoarding protective face masks. And Carousel decided to do a Choose to Give campaign, the public, the community to contribute to a greater cause. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that the social mentions, positive mentions of them has actually gone up and it has sustained across a period of time versus Mr. DIY who has done a one-off giveaway. So always remember, during this period of time, humanity makes a difference and brand affinity will always have a positive payback post-COVID. And there are also clients who come to us and say, hey, we don't want to go quiet, but we don't really know how to create new content because now that all the production houses are locked down, we can't go and do new shoots or photo shoots and all. So these are some ways you can actually recreate content. For example, if you have old assets in place, we can look at recutting them and infusing in some new stock footage or stock images into it to make it kind of new, change your messaging angle a little bit. If we have very long form videos from the past, we can piece together a few of them, sync them out and tell a different story. And obviously there's always throwback for legacy brands. So if you're a heritage brand, we can always look at, throwback 10 years ago, this was what the brand has done, or some of the big successful branding campaigns that we have done, we want to do kind of like a throwback. But importantly is how do you tweak your message so that it makes sense to consumers in the current climate. So I end off with this slide. When in doubt, always look into data to make a call. And one thing to take away from this, I hope, would be always look at past data to make a deterministic call, and don't do hypothesis or predictions. Look at the data that you have on hand. If you don't have your own data, look at what are the other sources you can draw data from. There are also a lot of free software out there. For example, SimilarWeb, Google Trends, and all. They all have free versions that you can extract data from. Don't be shy to ask data from your vendors that you work with or agencies that you work with. Get a new consumer lens. Always sharpen your targeting, especially during this period of time. No one consumer is the same as the other. And I think most importantly, do not go dark during this period of time. Make a conscious effort to infuse a bit more humanity in the kind of messaging that you share. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Summer. That was very engaging, especially the three pointers in terms of data-driven strategy, right? And also thank you for bringing in very relevant examples, considering our audiences, right, around Indonesia, Southeast Asia, Singapore as well. We have three questions.
Okay.
Yeah, three questions from our audiences. We'll go one by one. First is from Nicole. How can brands that are not directly related to this, the example from Nicole was like private schools, capitalize on this situation to drive relevance?
How can, the question from Nicole was, how can brands that are not really directly affected by COVID make use of these data-driven strategies?
Yes, correct.
Sorry, it's a bit noisy. Give me a second. Actually, I beg to differ. Even, say, for example, private institutes and all that, they're all into lockdown at this point in time. So tutors aren't able to reach out to the students, and a lot of them are doing home-based learning at this point in time. Now, there are also a lot of parents out there that's been commenting on forums and social media saying that it's not ideal for tuition centers or private institutes to do home-based learning because they're paying so much money. They're still paying the same amount of fees, but they actually have to teach their own kids on their own using home-based learning. Now, if you dive a little bit into social listening, or if you look a little bit into your own CRM data, or even Facebook chatbot that you may have on your Facebook page, you'll be able to find out some of the things that they're unhappy about and probably come up with some strategies to work around it as well.
So, Nicole, social listening is one option, right, for those brands to listen in and identify the opportunity for relevance.
Correct. And for people who don't have social listening actively, for example, NGO that we have, they actively monitor some of the Facebook groups to see if there's any negativity when it comes to charity donations at this point in time.
Thank you, Summer. Next question was from Jay. Based on the graphs, the spike in cases, the lockdown, those kind of data points, right? That's kind of happening now. Are there opportunities, or have you done kind of historical data-based predictions, right? Maybe a previous pandemic situation. Based on that, are there anything that we could kind of forecast to spot these trends faster?
Unfortunately, we haven't, because we haven't tracked data since, the latest pandemic was really SARS for us. So we haven't been tracking that. But I won't look back so much, because the consumer behavior during SARS period and now is really quite different. So I will really just look at using the examples and learnings from what we experience now to make forecast challenges that we may expect if another pandemic hits us again.
Right. All right. Thanks, Summer. Few more questions. Next one is from Alfie. How do you use data to use?
I think it really depends on the objective that you're trying to drive here as well. There are some brands who is very focused. They tell us that, hey, at this time, I'm interested in improving my brand share of mine. I want to improve positive sentiments of my brand. The brands that come to us and say, you know, I only want to drive sales, tactical, drive them to my e-commerce stores because I'm really badly hit from offline sales not coming in. Now, if you look at it in that manner, the way we differentiate ourselves is going to be quite different based on the kind of messaging that you want to drive. If it's all about humanity and all, improving positive sentiments, then we need to look at how data points from social listening and the kind of keywords that's popping out from there. If you are looking at, say, driving sales and all that, the data points that you want to look at could be different opportunities that we can look at, possibly cross-selling, upselling your products and all. And you can get it from your own e-commerce data, your site analytics, app analytics, or even data that you get in from your e-retailers.
Yeah. Thanks, Samar. Next question is from Labdi. Right, this is more on your second step, right? Use a different lens for your consumer segmentation. It's around that. Instead of the normal categories of consumers, you have created very different categories, emphasizing more on their interest and behavior, right? What led you make this classification as a new strategy? Was it more thought process, or was there a defined approach?
So we started this because of the mother's example that we were given. A lot of times when clients come to us, they give us very cookie cutter target audience that they have in mind. They feel like all mothers should be a certain mold, but in actual fact, it's not. If you look at reality, look at friends around us, every single individual that falls under the mother category is going to be really different. So we figured instead of looking at a person based on their identity as a mother or father or PMDD, let's target them based on interest instead. So when we are selling a product, say a handset, to someone who is a mother versus someone who has interest in photography, interest in technology, the messaging you use is going to be really different. So that's why we've decided to approach it differently based on a person's consumer behavior versus what the person is segmented into based on their life stage.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Samar. And the last question is from BB Muru. For clients executing digital for the first time, right? Maybe given the situation as well, what would be a good starting point for them in terms of using data? Which one should they start with?
This is a really good question. We've got some traditional clients who is obviously it's the first time they're going to digital. They don't have any digital data to begin with. No cookies, no device IDs and all that. So the first thing we look at for them is really social listening. So what is happening in the category, desktop research from Google search trends, what are people searching for, what's going to benefit them, what's the trend, Google trends, keywords and queries that's actually popping out in their category for them. And that's actually a pretty good starting point so that they know which are perhaps some product lines that should be looking at, or perhaps in the category, these are the concerns that consumers have, and that's how they should actually start off.
And one last question, Samar, more on data sharing. You did mention about leveraging our partners, vendors, agencies on getting additional data points, right? A question on that: how do you go about negotiating data sharing agreements to be beneficial for our partners or companies? I think if I would rephrase that, it's more about how do we convince our partners or vendors to share data?
If you're talking about players like Lazada, Zalora, and Shopee, I know they can be a bit sticky in sharing information. And this is something that's shared by our clients as well. So we ask them data with them in terms of user behavior, at least in the category, so that they know how to do better targeting. They can drive more sales towards Lazada. Now, for example, some e-retailers are a bit sticky about sharing actual numbers. So we ask clients an idea of where they stand against others in the category, but not knowing the actual numbers. So I hope I answered that question correctly.
Yeah, I think it's more about try to get what we might need, even if not exactly what they'll be able to provide.
Correct. I think the important
Kind
here
of make it generic.
Correct. At this point in time, right, where speed is of utmost importance, we can't look for perfection in terms of accuracy and all that. You pull a data source, you look through it, see through a few data points. If it makes sense, go ahead and start doing it. Test and learn. This is the best time to do test and learn. So that post-COVID, when it comes out, we have probably five to six test and learns that we have done, that we have learned from, that can be applied immediately right after.
Perfect. Thank you, Samar. I mean, thank you for taking 6 questions. If you could help in going through that, I'll take you through, but if you could select the best question, we can
Okay.
about the winner. So the first one was more on how brands that are not directly impacted capitalize on this to drive relevance. Second question was more on using pandemic data to identify trends faster. Third one was how do you use data to differentiate your campaigns from the noise of competition? Right? And fourth.
Okay. Actually, I have 2 favorite questions. The categories emphasizing on interest and behavior instead. And the other question was for clients executing digital for the first time. What's a good starting?
Understood. Thank you, Samar. That's for the voucher shift. And I mean, thank you for the session again. It was very relevant and very helpful. The examples were very contextual.
Okay.
Taking time to join us today and share their knowledge and insights with us. All of you who have joined us, the audience for this almost 2-hour session in the evening from Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. We very much hope that you feedback on the session. And lastly, I would like to extend a thank you also to our sponsors, Eclair, Decision Science.